What's up guys, Gary here for GenVFX. Welcome to another little one of my videos. This one is a one by one. We're going to look at a particular part of Blender. Going to try and do a pretty deep dive on this one. There's a lot in it. It's actually probably one of the most fun things to do in Blender. It's called Dynamic Paint. And if you've already used it, you know why I'm so happy that I'm doing this one. It's probably the sweetest, most nicest thing, most beautifully responsive thing in Blender, and it's just delightful to use. So I'm going to show you now what you do with it and what you can do with it, really, more to the point. I should use it more often, actually. So I've got this cube here, and don't kill me. There it goes, it's gone. We're going to get rid of that, obviously, as we just have, and I'm going to add in its place a grid. And let us just pop open that like that. I'm going to set this to 50 by 50. Let's make it a bit denser. And set that to 10 meters squared. Let's just go over here and turn on the wireframe so we can see I've got and some of polygons. Polygons? What's a polygon? I don't know. And I am going to also add another object, and I'm going to add a UV sphere. Why not? That's a useful thing. Let's go into tab first of all, and let's just scale this down somewhat, so it's a bit more smallery. There you go. And because I did it in element mode, as it were, rather than object mode, it means that if I show you this, all of the dimensional stuff, that's all nicely frozen and set, which is good. So let's just turn that off, get rid of that, and let's pick our UV sphere. And I'm just going to lift it up for now, and I'm going to push it over there. Because what we're going to do is we're going to turn this into like the paint canvas, and this into the paint brush. And so let's go over here, and let's pick this, and let's go over here and past collision and cloth, and go straight to Dynamic Paint and let go. And it'll say settings are inside the physics tab. Well, that's because they are. So let's go to the physics tab, and you've got here type. And type has two options, canvas or brush. Pretty self-explanatory. One you paint on, one you use as your paint, which is why I've got this here and that there. So I'm going to set that as canvas, and I'm going to add the settings for a canvas. Now, obviously, you can see a little bit of information here. You can remove it, obviously, and it's saying we've got a surface, and you can see there's a vertex symbol there. Well, that's because in a lot of cases, these things, Dynamic Paint paints on the vertexes, so it creates vertex values, which you can use for all sorts of things. And for example, you could use it for a texture map or a wet map, or you could use it for a blood splat even, I suppose. If you've got enough density and got it really sort of like an object which can basically throw itself, which was actually the shape of a blood splat. Otherwise, it's like I'm painting a blood splat. And then you've got here the format. So you can see vertex or image sequence. So the vertex one I've kind of explained, it's all basically built into the vertices, the dynamic paint strokes that you make. An image sequence is one that you can write out and use as an animating texture. That's really useful. And what you can do is, because all the things you can do with it, you can get all sorts of fancy effects. So we've got frame start, frame end, and substeps. And that is basically what frame do we start the paint on, what frame do we end making the paint, and how many sub-calculations do you want for that paint. Put in more substeps, you get more calculations. So we're going to leave that to 0 for now. And then here we have surface. So the surface type is paint. We know that. We've also got displace, weight, and waves. Now, what these mean, and this is really quite something. Paint will paint marks on the surface. Displace will essentially punch into the surface. Weight will write out a weight map based on the way this thing moves around. And waves is beautiful. It generates a wave pattern. So if you push an object through, it generates a wake and waves. And you're just like, oh, that's nice. I'll leave that as is. So then we've got a max distance and a displacement factor for the displace. We've got a scale influence and a radius for paint. For weight, we've got a similar thing with a scale influence and radius. And then for waves, we've got all sorts of lovely things. So I'm going to start with paint. Now there's a few things you've got to do to make this actually work, to make it visible. First thing you need is a brush. So I need to go this, and I can do it in this particle panel. I can press Dynamic Paint, and it'll say, what do you want? Do you want a canvas? No, I want a brush. There's my brush. Add the brush stuff, and it's like, what colour do you want the paint to be? What do you want the transparency to be? And do you want it like wet, or do you want it kind of like dryish? Okay, so I'm going to start by creating. Don't make waves. I won't. I will make waves in a bit, but I'm going to go back to paint. So I'm going to come here, over here, and let's do a little bit of animation. Let's go put this in the animation window. Don't worry about this. It's just so I can not mess around with the modeling window and add extra bits and bobs. So I'm going to press I and L. So what we've got is kind of some movements which could give us some interesting sort of like marks, all being well. Let's go back to the modeling window and get back to object mode, and we'll go, right, okay, well I want to see the stuff, I want to see the paint, of course. Why wouldn't you want to see the paint? That's what it does. How do you see the paint? I'll go into its Vertex Paint, so I'll go into Vertex Paint mode, and then of course that doesn't do what you want at all. So let's just do that. Let's come here. Let's put a timeline in there so I can actually scrub. So you should be able to see something there, but you can't. And the reason for that is because we actually haven't set any proper output yet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on DP Paint. There you go. I'm also going to put on the DP Wet Map. So what happens now is when I press play, you'll see it hits it, starts to leave a paint mark. So you can create shapes of color. And you'll also notice it's fading. And the reason for that is because it's set to kind of fade over time. And these are all stuff that you can extend or change, whatever. So you can say it dries very quickly. That's set to dry after 500 frames. I'm going to set that to dry after 25 frames. And what you'll find now is if I do it this time, it's practically fading out straight away. So you get like a textural, zoomy kind of thing. It's quite nice, you know, not gonna slag that off. That's good, that is. So let's have a little look again. Let's just see. So there we are, go in, and there you can also see it's dependent very much on the surface. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually come here, and on our object, I'm going to add a subdivision surface, and I'm going to put it above the dynamic paint. So in theory, we have more polygons that it's hitting. So you can see now there if I deselect. There you go. Fundamentally we're getting more. If you turn on optimal display, you can see how many we're getting. So let's turn it up to 2. And now when it comes to it this time, you'll see a lot more detail. And you can write these out. There you go. Yes, you're up to see. You can, what I can do is you can change it and you can actually write these out. At the moment, these are all running as vertex maps, which does the job very, very nicely actually for what we're explaining right now. So I'll leave it on there like that. But I'm going to start mucking around just to go through some of the things actually on this surface, just to explain what you can get. So if where are we? Dynamic Paint. We go to the dynamics, of course. And I'm going to set the time on that to be 500 again, because it is a better value for what we're trying to do and show what you can do. So it swoops around. If I just pop that there like this, there we go. In theory, you can actually write stuff with this. That's the great thing about it. So that's currently creating our paint layer and our wet map, and those are going into basically into groups. So go to vertex groups. There you go. So you can't see the wet map unless you click it, of course. So if you look at this, that's kind of a soft off. But if we go to the paint map, press play. So that's going to paint a blue line. There you go. So that's how we are getting the color. The color is the paint map, and the wet map. This is the one where you can actually get a black and white map, which you can use as a texture map when you export it out. Or you can get them and let them be stored as vertex maps, and then you can reference those in the shader. So to explain, you can write them out as textures, as I said, or you can put them into vertex maps. Now, I haven't done this for a while, so please forgive me if I get this wrong, but I think I can do this. So if I add a new shader to this, and I want to change the base color based on the material that's coming out of the vertices, the vertex map, I'll go input, and I will go, it's not UV map, it is vertex color. There you go. Vertex color into base color, and we will pick paint map. So in theory now, if I get myself, again, here we go. It's got a timeline. Go over here, beginning, play this through. We should see, there you go. So you're now using that vertex map as a texture map inside of here. And then what you can also do is say, right, well, I want this to not be shiny where this is, but I want this to be shiny where this water is. So we go, and we can just add a new vertex color, go add, input, vertex color, and we'll select the wet map. And let's, now this is obviously white where it's touching and black where it's not. So if we put that into the roughness, what will happen is that it doesn't do what we want, because that is not shiny, because it's a white value, it's a full value of 1. And that is lovely and beautiful and reflective because it's got the it's got the value of 0 because it's black. So what we're going to do is we're going to invert that. And the best way to do that, well, you can get a converter and you can use a map range and flip it. In fact, let's do it that way. I don't think I've actually done that for a long time. So we go from 0 to 1 to 1 to 0. And what we've done there is, in theory, we have flipped those around, but don't look like it's done it. It seems to have made it matte, but I can't see it. Oh, there you go. There is. It's just the state of the reflection. There you go. So essentially, I've set the 0 value to 1 and the 1 value to 0. So that has made that reflective in there. Yeah, if I just play that back, you can see that that is being used as the color map and also as the roughness. So we've got the roughness coming from the wet map. So what we can do, of course, is there's more things you can do with this wet map, which this is the bit I like. So I like it all. So what we can do is we can go into what we've got here. We've got drying times, we know that. We've got effects, and in here, cache obviously is as you'd expect. You can actually you've got to save the file first, obviously, for using it. But it is like bake, calculate up to the frame, current cache to the bake all dynamics. Every single one of those is about baking, which is exactly the same as all the particle stuff. I'm going to here, I'm going to click on spread. And I'm going to press here now, and you watch what happens to our paint. And as you can see, it's spreading out across the surface like it's properly wet. And then I'll put just a little bit of darkness into there. So that's really something. Big fan of that. What we've also got here is drip and shrink. We're going to turn off spread, and I'm going to turn on shrink. And let's just see what happens when you put on shrink. And as you can see, is it doing anything? So let me try and make that a little bit faster. Let's set that to, let's just set it to 5. See what happens there. There we go. So that's actually shrinking the actual effect of the brush. So it's not spreading it out, but what it's doing is saying whatever the radius of the object is, which is creating the paint, it's making it less. So it's actually sort of based on sort of like the motion of the object, and you can see it's doing a bit of spacing as well. It's quite nice. What I'm going to turn on now is drip. I'm not sure we're going to get much from this because we're on a flat surface. No, we're not. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to make a little alteration. I'm going to add into here an empty plane axis there in the middle, and I'm going to attach both my grid and my sphere to that empty. So let's do that. So they are now underneath that. Part of that, you might say. I'm going to go back to my first frame, and I'm going to go R for rotate. I'm going to rotate that a little bit that way. Maybe that's not quite what I wanted to do. Let's get it flat so I can see, and let's press R and just drag it that way. There we go. Because our animation is still going to work, but we now have we have a direction of motion down the page. Can you see that? So it looks like it's dripping, which is basically what it is doing. Again, you know, these are things that once you're connected into your shader, which of course we are, which is why we can see that, that's in the shader. And we can see it in the rendered view there. You know, you can actually simulate a paint drip down a surface if you wanted to. If you displace the surface, I don't know whether actually, I wonder, if you displace the surface, does it actually change the way it drips? I'm going to find out. Let's do this. This is good. Oh, it's like living a brand new life. All right, let's just press T in there. Come on. There we go. And let's go here. And I'm going to add, where shall I put it? Let's try putting it before the dynamic paint. It probably makes more sense if we put it there. So let's put a displace in. And let me, so direction to based upon the normal of the object. And I'm going to add to that a texture. Let's go to the texture. And we're going to new texture. Nope, not like that. Up here, we've got a Musgrave. So it's, ooh, blimey, that's all over the place, isn't it? That is all over the place. Let's leave it as a Blender original. I would like to reduce the octaves a little bit. And the intensity, which would make it feel a little bit more smoothy. And let's also go back into the displacement and let's set the strength to like 0.5. So it's kind of close to where it was. So let's see what happens now. So it goes through the surface. And you'll notice it's going through the displacement relatively nicely. And you are getting, yeah, we are most definitely getting exactly the same as we would without the displacement, because the displacement is in front or behind the dynamic paint. So let's pop that there. So now it's in front. So it hits that first. Yeah, that is definitely being affected by the shape of the surface. So you can actually get, you know, this lovely sort of like dripping sort of like wetness, and you can also see that it looks like paint, particularly because it's kind of like smearing and drying and showing that wetness through. It's really good. I absolutely flipping love this. And not only is it great like this is just the paint one, remember. This is purely the paint. This is nothing. The other things I haven't even touched upon yet, but I'm going to do them quickly now. But this is just fabulous. I love dynamic paint. It's one of the best things out there. There we go, lovely and flat. I'm going to change this from the paint. We're going to change this across from the paint system, i.e. from paint, dynamic paint, to, I'm going to put on waves. So you'll see what happens here now as this object goes in. I'm going to actually, let's just bring this down. So that's there. Might as well stay in this window now, we're in it. And I'm going to press play. And what you can see happening here, if you look, is you're getting waves. I know I sound ridiculous, but you are getting waves, and if you punch into the water, you get like a little drip, which is why I did that animation in the first place. So we'd get that, and I am always my flabber is always gasted every time I see this, because I just think it's so beautiful. So if we select this object, and we're in the shaded one, so that was on purpose, really. So I'm going to apply a new shader to this object, and I'm just going to, because this doesn't really give us back the paint as it does, because this is not for paint. This is, you're not going to get paint maps and whatever with this. This is for creating just beautiful watery waves. So I'm going to very quickly, let's pop this and let's turn off the scene world, and let's put this into, let's put that one in there. Okay. And I'm going to disconnect the base color for now, and I'm going to bring this down a little and shift a tiny bit of blue into it, and I'm going to put the specular up to full. I'll disconnect the roughness as well. Come here, disconnect roughness. There we go. And let's bring this down too, so you can kind of see better what's going on. So now you can, oh, I mean, look at that. I just love it. I love it. I love it, yes. Look at this. It's great. So you can build a river and you can run a boat along it and you can get a little bit of a wake. And then if you did some funky height mapping sort of thing with your shader, so if we say, well, let's add an input, let's add a, where's the one, is it geometry that I want? No, it's not geometry, that is, no, it is geometry. Yeah, I think it is geometry. So yes, it is. So let's add into here a converter, color ramp. I really wish color ramp was not in converter. I would like that just in color, because it's a color ramp. And let's make this black. Let's make this there grayish. And we'll leave that as the white. I'm going to put that into the base color. And I am going to add in here a color. Hey, map range. There we go. And I'm going to get the position. And I want to split that position up. So I just want just the Z, because I want to get just the height where it exists in the verticality of things. And let's go converter, and we want to separate X, Y, Z, get the position into there, and get the Z, which is our up value, into the value. And I want the result to go into the mapping, and I want the old height to be 0.1, that to be 0, and we should be getting, we're getting white bits from that. Yes, we are. There we are. That's what I wanted. So we get like these little white tops we should be getting. Is that really happening? A little bit maybe. It's definitely trying its hardest, isn't it? Let's bring that down. And then bring this down. Oh, it's not connecting. Oh, it's not connecting. Come on. In you go. There we are. Lovely. That's what I wanted. I thought something wasn't quite right there. So I'm just putting this so we've got a little, and let's change that to 0.05. Oh, 0.2 maybe. Oh, 0.3. That'll do. That'll do for me. So now what we've got is the height of 0.3 is equivalent of 1, which is that point there, and the height 0 is equivalent there, and that is going to our color. So as it goes and hits it, it goes and it creates a lovely little white wake just appearing behind it. There you go. Look at that. Oh, just a thing of absolute beauty. And then sploosh. There you go. That's basically the paint. The paint, sorry, that's basically the waves. And if I just go and click on this object, and if we have a little look here in the wave section, we've got damping, spring, and smoothness. So if I increase the damping to 0 now, increase the damping to 1, and we come back here. It's just, I say those little bits of shady bits with this, you can see it's now basically doing the displace. Yeah, it's carving a hole in it. That's what the displace does. But it's also, don't have to have it exactly like that. You can put it to 0.85, and what will happen is it will go in, and then you'll see it's kind of, that's more like it's pushing something that's a bit more viscous. So you can actually use it to generate different types of fluids like honey, as much as you can things like water, and also the previous one that basically a damping of 1, which is almost like pushing your foot into snow. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put that back to 0.01, so you can see what almost like the absolute madness of waves are. There you go. So there's lots and lots of ripples of stuff going on there. Look at that. Oh, it is just so lovely. And you'll also note it's bouncing off the borders of our object. So you're getting lots and lots of beautiful watery sort of like ripples. It's like free dynamics. It's a really lovely way of doing stuff like this. Don't forget, by the way, also, you can displace a surface and then apply this wave effect on top. So you can get like a nice kind of a watery effect of a river, and then add this with your boat going along the river. And it's just beautiful, absolutely really lovely. That dampening of 0.01 is probably closest to water, I think. However, if I put that at 0.04, which is what we had originally, the spring on this is currently 0.2. So it's nice and it's kind of like a loose spring. I'm going to set it to 1, and you'll see what happens now. We get a lot more rippling. It's kind of it's almost like the power of the repeat of the spring, if you see what I mean. So it's like bom, 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 bom. So that bounce, and it also increases all our ripples. So you'll see when that ball went in there, as the brush went into that end bit at the end, we actually get more wakes. So the spring is almost like, it's almost like, imagine the twists of a spring. The higher the value, the more the twists of the spring, which give you more ripples. I think that's probably the easiest way to think about it. And then of course we have smoothness. So if I put that spring back to what it was, which is was it 0.5? Yes, it probably was about 0.5. That looks about right. So let's go back here, and I'm going to put the smoothness to 0. Oof, wait for it. Oh, jaggedy, 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 jaggedy. So smoothness does exactly what it says, not on the tin. It just basically makes it really nice and smooth and gets rid of that awful jagginess. Unless you want that. I mean, you might. You may actually want the jagginess. So let's put that smoothness back to 1. Obviously here now you've got brush collection. Now that is kind of, if you've got more than one object, you can put them in a collection, and then you can have them doing multiple ways and things. So if I just take this sphere and let's unparent that, let's drag that out, and I'm going to duplicate it. So let's go Shift D and bring it over here and let go. It's got the same animation on it. Oh, look at that, it's very sweet when you drag. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get this, I'm going to change this temporarily to a graph editor. I just said graph editor because I'm so posh. Let's turn off the Z and the rotations and the scales for now. And I'm going to pick the X. Pick all of X, and let's just go GY. So push it over there, just so it's out of the way a bit. So in fact, and you can see it's working independently as well, because it's doing it. It's just working like the other object, basically. But if you've got a bunch of things which are all doing slightly different things, I mean, it doesn't really matter, you can have it like that. But what you can do is you can do it so you have a collection. So let's say, make a new collection, and I'll call it brushes. Let's take sphere and sphere 1, and let's just drag those into there. There you go. And let's go back to this canvas, and let's go here, and we'll go with brush collection, brushes. So if I now pull this back and press play, you will see it looks kind of exactly like the one before, and everything is influencing itself. Now if I change the scale influence to 0.5, you'll see it just kind of reduces the amount that's going on between the two. There's less, just feels like there's less interactivity between the two. Not entirely sure that's right, but it does seem to definitely make a little bit of a difference. And then of course if I set the influence to 0, in theory that should do very little. There you go, yeah. So then I can set the influence to 5, and it should be a lot stronger, but it's obviously it only goes as far as 1 because 5 was stupid. Gary, 5 was stupid. So that is our water. I love that. I think that's great. I'm going to click on these balls, and I tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to just get rid of this one, and I'm going to do the next bit. I'm going to speed through the next bit because I'm going to have to set this up a little bit. Okay, so bear with. Okay guys, so welcome back. Here we are. Now we're going to have a look at this in this view here. I'm going to leave that as metallic, I think, for the now. Or should I make it? Well, I'll tell you what, I'm going to make it maybe a little bit more appropriate. So let's just very quickly get rid of all of this. All of this. Let's get rid of that. And let us make this, keep the specular up. I'm going to make it rougher, like that. Let's just make it look a bit more like snow. So let's go to texture. Let's get noise. Let's pop the factor of that into there. And we'll see it should go a bit spotty. There we go. And then let's increase that. And let's reduce that detail. And let's keep the rushness. The Russianness. Oh, that's not good, is it? Keep the scale up. And I'm going to get this grey that's here. And let's just stop it from being grey. And in fact, move it and make it a little bit blue. Because kind of shadows inside of snow is blue. Now what we've got here, okay, we still have this as our physics object, this still is our canvas. We're going to select this, we're going to make this a dynamic paint brush. Okay, not a canvas, sorry, it's a brush. Leave that as it is, don't worry about the paint color because we're not painting, we are just doing other things. And this one, again, I'm also going to make this a dynamic paint brush, add the brush, and go, ooh, and you can see it's kind of displacing the surface. I'm hoping you can see that. I'm just going to try and put some more stuff in here. Can we do it with this one? Let's do it in this one. It's yeah, it's generating lots of water still. We don't want it to do that. Hang on, let's just stop this. Stop. Thank you. And we're going to go back into here, here, and over here. And we're going to increase the ridges and the valleys. And I'm going to change this at the moment from what it is, which is wave. And I'm going to change it very quickly to displace. So let's pop it on displace. And if we do this, what you'll see is this one is making a path along its shape through this kind of snow stuff. And the other one is jumping around and leaving a divotty hole. And there you go. Snow. It's lovely, isn't it? Of course, you can reduce the displacement factor. So set it to a smaller value. Or, of course, set it to... whoop. Oh, there you go. It was going to happen at some point. That's the first time that's ever happened during any of these. I'm going to keep it in. I'm going to keep it in. Yeah. Yeah. So I just had a complete bottom out. Blender just went, bye-bye. I don't play no more. And I was just basically showing at the time how the displace works, which is great. So it kind of does what you'd expect. It basically uses useful things like footprints or when a bullet hit the surface or anything like that. In fact, to be honest with you, you can even use water for similar sort of things. But as I said, if you want it to be like reactive skin or something like that, it's kind of like a poor man's soft body, I suppose is the best way to look at it. But what I wanted to show you again was this. This is actually, I'm going to go into our viewing settings here. Where did we go? We need to be in the vertexes, and I'm going to pick on the paint map. So I've got a red mountain, because why not? And I have here I've got a paint brush up here. Now you can see I've got this dynamic paint, and it's saying, well, where's... And I've got a particle system. The particle system is blatantly obvious. It just like fires out a load of particles. Yep, so you can see that. There you go. And it's just doing nothing. Or is it? I'll come back to this. Let's take it right at the beginning. So the particles themselves you can use as a paintbrush. So you can drip them and drop them and slide them all over the place. So if I go down to my particle system here and I open up with dynamic paint, you'll see the brush has been set here. You can say the paint, you can say it's mesh volume, which is basically what it normally is, which is basically as your object passes through, I use the volume of the space of the mesh, of course. But also you've got object center, so it's like kind of a point. Proximity, so it's how far an object is away from an object, and you can create the distance and whether it's a smooth object or not, or whether it's a projection, which is quite useful. You can both mass and proximity, or you can use your particle system Now when your particle system comes in, it looks just like that. It's got a particle system, doesn't say what it is. But we have a particle system already on our extended sphere. So if I go and select that, so you set it to use the particles radius. So if you have a variety of objects, of particles that is, of different sizes, it will use that particle's own ID radius for the paint splat. So it's even more impressive. And then if you use velocity, you can have that as a way of actually controlling the color or the alpha, or indeed the level of displacement based upon the colors that are in the ramp, which is really, really, really useful. And can also then, you'll notice underneath the smudge, and that means that what you can do is you can run that over the top of, when that's flagged, you can run your paint over the top of the current paint there, and it will smear it. If I use these, you can see the little diddly dots, and they are coming down and they're painting this kind of thing, this hillside with these purple sort of like marks here. Okay, so if I change this to like a yellow, you can't see now because it's not reset. Here you go, we're getting like a greeny yellow smudge going down the face because it's the green, yellow and the smudge together. There you go. So you're actually, it's actually a very, very neat little way to paint dirt into your texture map. It's really, really, really clever. And then you can take that and you can burn that out as a texture map. It doesn't have to just be vertices, and that's one of the great things about it. What you can also do is you can change it to a UV texture, and then you can say what texture is that. So if you've got a UV map that's built in the object, that's fine. And then if you have a painted texture that you want to use, that will appear there. You just have to have it already in the scene. You have to just, so if we create this, and if I go and use a Musgrave, no, actually, let's use a magic because it's got some color to it. We go back here into our object, into our canvassy thing, and we want it to be that texture. And then in theory, when we reset, there you go. And then you'll see that these do what you'd expect to on top of this. They still do the same thing as they did before, just make it all mucky and nasty and sort of like smeary, which is a bit fancy, isn't it? I'm just, you know, you can, what you could do with dynamic paint, I still find absolutely incredible. It's just a really, really elaborate little package. The waves, the paint, the displacements, it's all a bit special. The texture mapping system is very simple, by the way. When you are writing out the thing from up here, change the format to an image sequence. Well, where did you go? Resolution, right. So if we say 1024, bake image sequence. So let's go here, and I'm going to point it at my desktop, at my render, at my GenVFX, and I'm going to create a new folder in here. Let's just do this now. Might as well. And I'm going to call this mountain smear. It's just going to go into that folder. Right. So paint maps and wet maps. Let's paint them both. And let's, should we bake the image sequence? There you go. And if you look down the bottom here, you've got dynamic paint bake. And it's just going through 2% and so on. And we are doing 1024 maps. So I'm going to, while that's working on them, I'm going to open up a folder. Should get one open in a second. Come on, Mr. Folder. There we go. And here we go. So it's now opening 5,000 folders. So let's go to the desktop and go into my renders and GenVFX, and we go into mountain smear. And here you can see, if I just take one of the ones a bit further down, right, you can see if I pick this one here, let's pick 38. Here are our splats at the top as they're coming out and down. So this is the bottom of our mountainside, and this is the top of the mountainside. So if we move, these are really rattling through them now. If I pick the equivalent wet map, you'll see what I mean. Okay, so yeah, they're also like painting and smearing. So if I, wait a second, if I go up here and I'm going to pick this first one, I'm going to open it with something called DJV Viewer. If it will let me open it with, come on, I know you're on here. There we go, DJV Viewer, and go OK. This will run, it'll play back the image sequence. But as I say, it's still rendering, so it's going to think about it. So here you go. And I just do this a bit smaller. It's upside down because of the UV map, but you can see that it's generating all of these splats and these marks. And then you can just put them in as a texture map. So once you've baked what you want to do, that's it. So you could do anything. You could do objects rolling down the hill, leaving dirt in their path, pushing rubbish and debris out of the way with dynamics and having this sort of like smeary effect occurring. It's good stuff. Just drag this into here and it should update the amount of frames. It's really quite impressive stuff. And it's something which I think sometimes is completely overlooked for certain things. Like, oh no, we need to do it with a water simulation. It's right there. That's your water simulation right there. You drop an object into it and then you just like smooth it around and stuff. Or you can put an object in, and so that when that object starts to move, so like if you've got like a person who's meant to be standing in water, you can pop an object in there which takes the place of the body and displaces kind of the water a bit. And then as you swish it around, you get little waves and little wakes. It's just a really, really clever little tool. Listen, I hope that's been of some use. And if you want to know more, try it. Just do it. Just do it, he said, putting on his best shine buff. Just do it. It's the tools are there. You've got the talent. Absolutely. Everybody can do this. They just have to get their heads down and learn it. But it's not a difficult learn. None of this is a difficult learn. If I can do it, you can do it. Right, okay, I'm going to sign off now. Please don't forget to hammer that like button if you've liked this, and bang the subscribe button and hit that little bell so you get every single thing that I do. You know, tell your mates, tell your friends. I have mentioned before that myself and a friend called John Stopforth, we create a podcast called the Grafters Podcast. We're moving it pretty much to, meant to be moving to a bi-monthly thing because we have so little time to do anything. What with everything else we're actually doing in our lives. It may end up being just monthly. But we are aiming to have pretty much interviewing someone who works in the TV or the film industry or animation or anything to do with graphics and the wider areas. Even hopefully we'll get to speak to people who actually make some software. I would love, actually. I would absolutely love to be able to speak to Ton Roosendahl, but that's never going to happen. Not on this sort of level, I don't think. But yeah, take care, guys. Speak to you soon. My thoughts and prayers go out to anyone out there who is Ukrainian and what is happening currently in your country. I don't know what I could do to help, but if my thoughts are definitely with you. Take care, everybody, and speak to you soon. Bye.